Pop culture tends to favor American characters and stories. The idea of a male superhero is usually even more narrow, with most of them being tall, clean-cut guys who mostly look the same. I mean, if there was a police lineup with Bruce Wayne, Superman, and the Punisher, and they were all wearing civilian clothes, there wouldn't be much difference between them. They're all tall, muscular, square-jawed men with black hair. That's what makes Wolverine so interesting. Who would have thought that a short, fuzzy Canadian with a weird haircut would become one of the most popular superheroes in the Marvel Comics canon? But with popularity comes imitators. Welcome to Top 10 Nerd. I'm Adam, and today we'll be taking a look at the top 10 Wolverine knockoffs you won't believe. Let's get started. In at number 10 is Popclaw. The Boys television show and the comics that inspired it are filled with characters that are meant to stand in for more well-known and beloved superheroes in an effort to tell a story about what superpowered beings might be like in the real world. Homelander is obviously meant to be Superman. The Deep is clearly a play on Aquaman, and Queen Maeve is very much Wonder Woman. One of the more minor characters to appear in both the comics and the TV show is Popclaw. Popclaw is a woman whose name is rather self-explanatory. She has claws that pop out of her arms with which she attacks her enemies. She's less one-to-one with Wolverine than other characters in the franchise are with their heroes that inspired them, but the influence is clearly there in aesthetic if nothing else. More comic-savvy fans will probably say she is more similar to X-23, and the creator of the character, Gareth Ennis, has said that she is actually inspired more by Scandal Savage, but for the more casual viewer of the TV show, the first thought that will pop in their mind when they see Popclaw and her powers will be, oh, it's Wolverine. So for that reason, she will get the number 10 slot on this list. But in at number 9 is Seahawk. This character from Image Comics is really Mark Barrows, who was hunting for underwater artifacts with his family when one of the artifacts blew up, resulting in his father's death, but him and his brother being granted superpowers and becoming the heroes Seahawk and Cold Snap. He would go on to join the superhero team The Brigade, and overall isn't that much of a Wolverine knockoff. However, the fact that one of the powers granted to him was accelerated healing, and the fact that his look is kinda Logan-esque with the fangs and the pointy-eared mask makes me think that Wolverine was at least an influence on the character, and makes me comfortable putting him on the low end of this list. Number 8. Warblade. Warblade is an often forgot character that was created by Jim Lee and Brandon Choi for the DC Comics Wildstorm universe. Similar to what happened with Wolverine, Warblade was kidnapped and brainwashed so that he would be a member of an elite strike team known as the SHOC before breaking free of their control and joining a super team known as the Wildcats. Unlike Wolverine, he is not human and instead a Karen, an alien race who can shapeshift into a mercury-like substance. He can use this metal morphing ability to create claws, which he of course uses to attack his enemies. He is also a world-class martial artist with ties to Japan, but though he is clearly inspired by Wolverine, he is different enough to rank pretty low on this list as well. Number 7. Lobo. Lobo is a really interesting character as he was originally created as a joke. He was meant to be a parody of the gritty anti-heroes who were becoming so popular in the 90s by being a ridiculously buff space bounty hunter who would say goofy tough stuff, and it was just meant to be a big old goofy joke. One of the characters who was a main source of inspiration, according to one of its creators, Roger Slipher, was Wolverine, with his tendency to drink beer, constantly talk about how edgy and tough he was, and always talking about how he was the best there is at what he does. And what he does isn't very nice. Lobo also has a powerful healing factor, but that's neither here nor there. What the creators at DC Comics didn't anticipate was that the readers wouldn't take the character as a joke and would genuinely love the main man. Not once to look a gift horse in the mouth, DC quickly expanded the character to give him his own identity and gave him his own series of books. Number 6. Wildchild. First appearing in Alpha Flight number 1, Wildchild was created by John Byrne to be little more than a Wolverine-like character. Like Wolverine and Sabretooth, who isn't on this list as he was created to be a foil to Wolverine as opposed to a copy, Kyle Gibney has an animalistic nature as well as a healing factor and razor-sharp claws. Due to his freakish appearance, he was shunned by humanity until he was found by Department H, who made him a member of the Alpha Flight training program, Gamma Flight. When Alpha Flight had its funding pulled by the government and went independent, members of Beta and Gamma Flight were recruited by the evil Jerome Jackson, assassin to be members of the evil Omega Flight, who tried to defeat Alpha on 2 separate occasions in John Byrne's original run on the comics. When John Byrne left the book to work on the Incredible Hulk series, Wildchild was just a Wolverine-esque villain who had never really been an issue for the Alphas to defeat, but he was further developed by subsequent writers to be a more unique character, eventually joining the hero team and becoming Weapon Omega and dating fellow teammate Aurora. His morality has shifted quite a bit over the years, with him being a member of the Hellions, X-Factor, Weapon X, and becoming a good foil for Wolverine to fight rather than a throwaway copy he was originally intended to be. Number 5. Killraiser. Honestly, I feel like the motto of Image Comics in the 90s for the most part was, what if we took this character and then made them extreme? I mean, Spawn is undeniably cool and original as a character, but a lot of the characters sometimes feel like everything that was whack about comics in the 90s and turned to 11. Look at Killraiser for instance. He is a mute character who has sharp claws that come out of his gauntlets that he uses to fight and brutally tear to shreds his enemies, but then they took it the extra mile. This is how I think the pitch meeting went for this character. Dude, what if Wolverine had more claws? You mean, dude, like claws that come out of his feet as well? Nah, dude, what if Wolverine was just claws? Dude, what do you mean? I mean, what if he was mute so we never had to develop him as a character, and instead of being a dude that just has claws, he was just a dude made of claws, coming out of every part of his body? Dude, that's awesome. Number 4. Pantha. In one of the more brazen acts of copying the editor of New Titans in the 90s, Jonathan Tierson wanted to make the Titans more like the X-Men. Rather than taking, say, the element of using a superhero story as a metaphor for prejudice or introducing the more convoluted relationships between characters of the universe to tell long, overarching stories, they decided to take this not literally and make some characters that were more like popular characters from the Marvel team, one of which was Rosabelle Mendez. Otherwise known as Pantha, or X-24, was a woman with cat-like abilities and claws who had a mysterious past she knew next to nothing about. She was subjected to experiments that granted her abilities, and she had to control her animal-like rage lest she lose control and scratch up everyone around her. Beyond that, the blue and yellow bodysuit with a yellow animal-like mask makes Pantha a pretty clear Wolverine ripoff. Of course, with the designation X-24, you might be forgiven for assuming she was a ripoff of Marvel's Laura Kinney, otherwise known as X-23. But Pantha does actually predate her by over a decade, with Pantha first appearing in the early 1991 and X-23 first appearing in late 2003. Number 3. Wolveroach. Cerebus was a comic book series that starred an aardvark named Cerebus, who works as a barbarian. The series was originally intended to be a parody of Marvel's take on the Conan the Barbarian series, but over time became an odd hodgepodge of experimental explorations of religion, gender, and politics. It had a large cast of characters, many of whom were clear parodies of iconic superheroes, but one of the more egregious ones was the Cockroach, who over the course of the story took on various superhero identities such as Moon Roach, Punisher Roach. However, the one that got the most attention was Wolveroach. As you can see, he was basically just Wolverine. The character's role in the story was to be a character who had an almost religious fervor about him, intended to parody the oversaturation of Wolverine in the comics at the time. As Dave Sim put it himself in an interview for Comics Journal in 1996, when it came time to do a Roach character that had the ambience of religious fervor surrounding him, it had to be Wolverine. The fact that Marvel got so upset about me putting Wolverine on the successive covers, it's not a parody, you are now stealing the central icon of our church. Well, there you go, yes, I picked the right one. I didn't realize I was going to be putting my foot in this badly. I thought parody's parody, but you can take the chalice they called Captain America and do a parody of that. You can take the subaltern and do Moon Knight, but by God, don't you touch our Wolverine. That's the center of our church. As you can tell, Dave had very strong feelings about how popular Wolverine was and seems to also be kind of a weird dude. Number 2. Ripclaw. Cyberforce was originally intended to be a spin-off series of X-Men and X-Force, before eventually ending up at Image Comics rather than Marvel. It makes sense that a few of the characters would bear some similarities to members of the various mutant teams. The character that clearly riffs on Wolverine is Ripclaw. Actually, a good rule of thumb, if a character has the word claw in his name, there's a 70% chance that they are a Wolverine knockoff, as you can tell from all the other parts on this list. Ripclaw got his abilities after the spirits of his ancestors left him the mystical power to take on animal-like abilities, which is nice for him. I mean, all I got from my ancestors was the ability to burn in the sun and a history of heart disease. Ripclaw was then captured by the evil Cyberdata Corporation, who brainwashed him and gave him cybernetic enhancements such as razor-sharp claws. He has a tendency to snap into an animal-like rage, and he has also got a healing factor. Wolverine. He's basically Wolverine. But in at number 1 is Deadlock. Another Image Comics character, John Locke was an ordinary lowlife until he had a heart attack and died. He was taken to the shady science group known as Project Born Again, who discovered that he had a latent mutant gene, and they resurrected him, driving him completely insane in the process. He went on a rampage before being eventually taken out and resurrected again and assigned to be a member of the superhero team Bloodstrike. Just by looking at him, the Wolverine influence is pretty clear, with the fangs, the claws, and the mask that is exactly like Wolverine's, just a different color. It always baffles me when characters that are this similar to the characters they are ripping off of are created. Like, yeah, Wolverine was huge in the 90s, but if you create a character that is this similar, don't you realize that most people are just gonna be like, man, I'd rather just go buy a Wolverine comic? Any other Wolverine knockoffs we didn't mention here? Any other character imitators you want us to explore? Let us know in the comments down below, and remember to like and subscribe for more Top 10 Nerd. I'm Adam Andrews, peace out nerds.